Welcome to the Chai Academy, being broadcast from the Chai Center. So, our previous class, which was held yesterday, was on the Jewish understanding, the Jewish appreciation of tzedakah, loosely translated as charity. And we went through a decent amount of information, etc. And you can always view yesterday's class at thechaicenter.com/academy on the Jewish attitude of charity. Today is a part 2, and there's, you could probably talk about charity for who knows how long. Hi, Eileen. You can talk, many classes, but let's focus in on some additional specific Jewish information. So it's an interesting story. We know in Judaism that everything that's created is created for a purpose. So there was this fellow that challenged his rabbi, and he said, "Rabbi, is everything created for a purpose? Everything? From a human being to an ant, from a cloud to a car, from a weed, right, to a washer. Everything in God's world, natural or synthetic, right, is created for God's purpose. Is that true, Rabbi?" And the rabbi said, "Yes, absolutely true." So he says, "So why did God create a heretic? Why did God create somebody that doesn't believe in him? What is the purpose of that?" So the rabbi thought for a minute and says, a heretic has a purpose. A heretic actually has an important purpose. And the purpose is when somebody comes to you, and whether it's a poor person or whether it's an institution or whether it's the Chai Center, shameless plug, when someone comes to you and asks for charity, right, do not say to yourself, "Let God provide." Imagine God is not existent right then. Be a heretic and help the person or the institution out. That is what the rabbi answered. That the reason why God created this concept called heresy is because that we should realize that we need to step up to the plate to help, and not just say God will surely provide. Because God will surely provide is not necessarily the plan, the correct plan. The plan is, God's plan is, that this person came to you and asked you, came into your path, crossed your path, so that you can help them and they can be helped by you. Right? But other than that, you can't say God will provide. No, you will provide. I once did a slogan as a fundraiser, and it goes something like this: that maybe I shouldn't have started, but it was something like this: that yes, God will help, but the money's in your pocket. Something like that. Judaism in general, it's part of our daily life. When a baby's born, we give charity. By the bris, we actually say we're going to give charity in the child's honor. There's an interesting custom that many people have. It's my custom. Is as soon as my child was born, I ran to the yeshiva, whether it was the boys' yeshiva or the girls' yeshiva, and I wrote him a $10 check, and to say this is a down payment on my child's tuition. Right? Basically, I gave tzedakah, but I said to them it's a down payment, so that way, God, please help me be able to afford my son, my daughter, having a Jewish education. But it goes beyond that. We put charity in the charity box every day. We encourage our kids to instead of you giving the poor person, ask your kid. Hi, Marianne. Ask your kid to say, give me the money to give the $1, the $5 to your kid, and say, you give it. We need to inculcate. It's part of life. It's part of life. When somebody's sick, when we make the Mishaberach, what do we say? We say, and charity will be given by family and friends. In other words, it's not just an ethereal prayer to God. It's more than that. It's God, we're asking you. And not only are we asking you, we are stepping up to the plate and helping people you love. Please help people I love. That is the concept. And I mean, it's there's a charity box one should have in their house. There's a charity box that there is in the synagogue. There's a charity box that one should have in one's office. Charity is part and parcel of who we are as a Jewish person. And of course, charity is not just relegated to Jewish people. It is this is a universal concept where we give charity. And as we explained yesterday, charity is really righteousness. Somebody's sick, somebody passes, right? We say the Kel Maleh prayer, the memorial prayer. We mention tzedakah. Yiska prayer, on Yom Kippur we say Yiska. It's in there as well, that we will give tzedakah in their memory. And it's the same idea, that God embraced the loved one because we're embracing you. Now, Maimonides has a fascinating discussion in his magnum opus. And he says there's actually 8 levels of charity. And if you think about it, when we go through these 8 levels, that's what we're going to do for the rest of the class. When you think about it, it's really, you can structure your whole life around these 8 levels. You can go from apathy to mentoring, right? And the in between. So Maimonides says the lowest level of charity is when you give in sadness. Eileen just asked the question, how do we say no to causes we don't support without seeming rude? If they are antithetical to Judaism, to morality, you don't have to feel bad. That's the first thing. If they stand for something, a Muslim terrorist, Al Qaeda, give money to Al Qaeda. You don't have to give. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You just simply don't have to give. But otherwise, you can say, I will give you a little, but I have my favorites, or my one in my community, or whatever. The poor people in my town come first. So the first level is Maimonides. The lowest level is giving in sadness, giving in pity, right? So, in other words, you're giving why? You're giving, happy Hanukkah, Steve. You're giving why? Because you feel bad. That's why you're giving, right? You say, I can't stand to see people in need, right? Remember, we discussed it yesterday. We don't give. It's not based on feelings. It's based because it's the righteous thing to do. So giving because you can't stand to see a homeless person, which is a level of charity, by the way, because the lower level than that is, I don't care, I'm not looking, I'm not interested. You're not apathetic here. You're not. You're already, you're a step into being a good, kind, generous, righteous person. But it's because you had a feeling, and your feeling was one of sadness. So Maimonides says that's the lowest level, right? Right, and it's almost when one gives out of because you feel badly, you feel terribly of seeing a homeless person, or you feel horrible that you're the rabbi is calling you for a donation because can't make payroll or whatever, but that is because you feel bad. And it's almost like you were coerced, you were giving unwillingly. I think that's the idea, but not to say it's not a mitzvah. It's tremendous. The next level is giving willingly, but inadequately. So remember, 10% is the law. 20% is what's nice, generous, providing it doesn't hurt your family, as we discussed yesterday. But so you give willingly, but you just don't give enough. You feel. I remember I had an appointment in Manhattan with a very, very wealthy man, and I drove to Manhattan. I paid for parking. I went there, and when I was there, he said, I'm not a giver. I'm not a giver. And he wrote out an $18 check. Now, it didn't pay for gas, let alone for parking. Now, I don't have ill feelings, but I remember it clearly. So that was inadequate. That was inadequate. Why make the appointment? Say, Rabbi, I'll send you a check of $5. He made the appointment. And so you could say maybe the flaw was me. Maybe I didn't present it well. I was amateurish or unprofessional or came over. Something rubbed him the wrong way. It's possible. But you get the idea. You give willingly, but you give, as they say in Yiddish, zu sein. Okay, here's $5. Right? That type of thing. The next level in Maimonides' chain, and by the way, you can comment, feel free to comment here, any way, anytime. The floor is yours. It's not me. It could have been me. Thanks, Eileen. The next level is you give adequately, but you wait until you're asked. In other words, you're in abeyance. You say, okay, are they going to ask? They're going to ask. They're going to ask. And by the way, that happens a lot. Most of my life, I think, is that way. Just as somebody who raises money for the Chai Center's activities. When I ask, people say, thank you for asking. It's an unbelievable thing. And by the way, it's a warm, cozy, nice thing to say. Thank you for asking, because that is, that's, you feel like it's a friend you're talking to. But Maimonides says you give adequately, but after being asked is not as high as the next level, giving before being asked. You just step up to the plate, and that's probably 30% in my experience. I'm not sure. I got an email about that it's jumping. I don't know. I reset it. I have different prongs, and it seems to be not. There's a little static here. The next level, Maimonides says, is giving tzedakah publicly, but to an unknown recipient. Right? You don't know who, you give it publicly, but you don't know who's getting it. You just don't know who is getting the money. Steve brings up an interesting point, that the person that gets charity, that asks for charity, is higher than one gives. It does say that. It does say that and by the way, this is a teaching the Rebbe taught me, the Lubavitcher Rebbe taught me. He says that when you ask for charity, for the Chai Center, and it's true of an individual. I don't ask charity for myself. I'm a W-2, no matter what I raise, and and I'm the last one to deposit the check. But this is what the Rebbe taught, that you're actually availing someone, allowing them to do a mitzvah. By you asking, you're actually making a mitzvah happen. So it's a very lofty concept. You're inspiring somebody to give charity by your ask. Your ask is the inspiration. So thank you, Steve. Good point. So we were talking about giving tzedakah publicly to an unknown recipient. But higher than that is giving tzedakah anonymously to a known recipient. So that's now much higher than that. Number 7, So in other words, giving tzedakah publicly, so to an unknown recipient. The recipient knows who they're getting the money from. The donor doesn't know who is giving the money to. They tell a story in the Talmud is that there were certain philanthropists that used to walk in the street and they used to throw coins on the floor, and they never turned around. So they don't know who picked it up, but the ones that picked them up knew the game. That this person is going to drop coins on the floor, and it's designed for tzedakah, but it never looks back, so he doesn't know. But it's public. He knows, right? The level of giving tzedakah anonymously to a known recipient. Here, the recipient doesn't know who's giving the tzedakah, right? But the giver does know who the recipient is, right? But the recipient has no idea. He has no idea. He knows he's getting helped, but he doesn't know from where. Number 7 is giving tzedakah anonymously to an unknown recipient. Both are unknown. Both, right? So how do you do that? So, for example, the Chai Center, we have this Chai Center pot, right? We raise money. So 20% goes to the special needs program. 20% goes to our Hebrew school program. 20% goes to our preschool program. In ideal world, sometimes it doesn't work that way. It depends what's cooking. Then a 30% goes to the community. In other words, it goes to paying the mortgage, it goes to paying the general salaries, it goes to providing the lights and the rabbi's salary and other salaries here, and just to make this place work. Right? Preschool pays its tuition and whatever the 20%. Hebrew school likewise. The 30% goes to this general Chai Center problems that we have here. Fix the roof, whatever it is. Then there's 10%. The 10% goes to people, right, from the fund. So people donate money to the Chai Center. 10% goes to people knock on our door. You don't know who they are. I don't even know who they are sometimes. Sometimes I do. So you don't know who they are. They don't know who you are. That is an extremely lofty level of charity giving, that nobody knows each other. Nobody knows. It is completely anonymous from both sides. That is a lofty level. The highest level, says Maimonides, is where you give a loan to a person. Interest-free. In Judaism, we don't charge interest, especially to an individual. If it's to a company, there's ways around it. You become a partner in the corporation for a certain amount of money. But you give an interest-free loan. This way, you're not giving tzedakah. You're giving an interest-free loan. Or you give them a job. Or you become partners with them. To say, look, if you do, I want to invest the money, and I want you to buy the house and sell the house. And I'll get back my investment plus 50%, and you'll make the 50%. So whatever it is. So that is you becoming a partner, right? And if you can't give them a job, maybe you'll find them a job. The Chai Center person, by the way, just started a new business where they fill jobs. If someone needs a job, they have a list of jobs, and you call her, and she's recruits for different companies, right? But here's the caveat. The caveat is that when you give them this loan, when you give them this job, when you give them this partnership, is the bottom line is it should result that they don't have to ask anymore. It should be such a good job. Not that you're making 10,000 a year and you still need to raise 30,000 to support your family minimally, right? Poverty, and you still have to rely on the government, etc. It's the goal is that the person should not be dependent on others. That is the loftiest level of charity. These are the eight levels of charity. By the way, in the Talmud, it discusses that the rabbis used to do number 6 a lot. What was number 6? Number 6 is, or is it number 5? So it is what the sages used to do. They used to walk around in secret, middle of the night, and they used to put an envelope, money or coins or whatever, of the poor. Right? So this way, this way is the person knows who it's going to because he's putting the envelope down, but the recipient has no idea. And the Talmud talks about they used to do this a lot. We have a saying. Those are the 8 levels. We have a saying in Judaism, tzedakah tatzil mimaves, that tzedakah saves one from death. That tzedakah can actually alter a decree. So we could pray and give charity, and the person still dies, as an example. That's because the answer was no. But in Judaism, we believe that we can change the narrative if God wants to change the narrative. The person is sick. The person is destined to pass, and it doesn't pass. Right? Gets another 6 months, gets another year. Now, one could say, it's arbitrary. Doctors, gave him 3 weeks, or one could say that God listened to our prayers and accepted the charity that you gave, and therefore allowed the person to live. Countless stories of people who the doctors gave up, and there's I'll tell you this story. My brother had COVID, and my brother was after 4 weeks of being on the vent, I received a call from his wife that the doctor said that you should be prepared. You can't gather anybody at the bed, but you should be prepared and tell your family. So she called me, and she said that it looks like it's over. Then the rabbi of the community, large community in Chicago, called me and said, we can't accept this. We cannot accept this. In 1 hour, we're going to gather for Tehillim, for Psalms, and we're going to add a name, and we're going to give charity. So we did that, and it was right before Passover. Right before the Seder, a couple hours before the Seder began. For me, it was 1 hour. For Chicago, it was like 2 hours. Anyway, then we started this a Tehillim club. And the entire book of Tehillim, the entire book of Psalms, 150 chapters, were recited like 140 times over the course of 48 hours. Just hundreds, perhaps thousands of people reciting Psalms for my brother, and with his added new name. During the Seder, I got a phone call from a doctor, and the doctor said, look, he's a very sick boy. He's not going to make it. But however, we'll do our best. You have that as my pledge. I called this doctor and I said that no one can go in. I need you to be his surrogate father or surrogate uncle, and help him. And there's a $50,000 reward. And he said, I don't want the $50,000 reward if he lives, and forget that. That's forget that. But I hear the desperation. I get it. So this is during the Seder he called me. The next day, Yom Tov, on the phone to this one and that one. Doctor calls me again, middle of the Seder, my phone rings again. It's the rabbi telling me that, you got to call the wife because we got to move him from this hospital to that hospital, whatever. It was just craziness. On the last day of Passover, 8 days later, with a game of brinkmanship, they turned off his oxygen. And he breathed on his own. They had to turn it on a half hour later. They shut it off. Then it lasted an hour. And they finally were able to remove the vent. Luck, fluke, body regenerating. Could be, of course. But it also could be the name change, the charity, the prayers, right? And this class is focused on charity. Charity, tzedakah, tatzil mimaves. Tzedakah saves somebody from death, and we believe that, and we put all our energy and focus into giving tzedakah at trying times, giving tzedakah at happy times, because we're obligated to bless God on good times, bless God on bad times, ask God in good times, ask God in bad times, help our fellow man in good times and in bad times, and either way, whichever step you choose of Maimonides steps, realize it's extremely, extremely powerful. We are 1 week away from our fundraising campaign, where we're working on matches who will match, and we are trying to get matches for 160,000. 16 matches at 10,000 each. If you want to be a matcher, let me know. And we'll raise the other 160,000. So if you can help us, it's December 8th to 10th is when it goes live. But you can give a donation today or before the 8th even, and it will be put into this matching fund campaign. We're trying to raise 320,000 to change the Chai Center narrative. Thank you, Eileen. Yeah, we spoke about it yesterday. You're amazing. And to change the narrative of the Chai Center to be upbeat and not desperate, and be able to support a lot, including people knock on our door. So 320,000, 160 will be from matches. The rest will be from hundreds of people. Today you can go to charity with a D instead of charity, charity.com/the Chai Center, and you can make a donation, and it will be matched from the 8th until the 10th. God bless. I'm gonna write it here so it's there for posterity. Whoops, didn't quite work the way I wanted, but there you go. And thank you. Please spread the word and help us make a difference. That's the bottom line. And if you can help, if you can make a team, and say, I'm going to raise $200, I'm going to raise $500, and send it out to your friends, I'll raise $1,000. I've personally taken on to raise over the course of the next week $36,000 to the campaign, in addition to matches. So God bless, and love you. Thanks for your help. May the Schwartz be with you, and may the tzedakah that you give be a blessing in not only your life, but truly in your family's life and all those that you meet. And may God protect you not only from death, God protect you from bad encounters, negativity, etc. Be well.